Okay, hello again, YouTube. Um, I know it's been maybe a month or so since my last video, but I'm back on. Yay, I'm back. How you doing? Um, yeah, today my video was about why I'm doing a low carb diet as opposed to maybe in a recent video I talked about how I was on more of a high carb, low fat, vegan type of diet. So I'm doing low carb at the moment, with an emphasis on meat and eggs, and also a bit of cheese and yogurt and things like that. Excuse me. um, but the thing is, yeah, some people might wonder why the huge flip. Like you've gone from vegan to now like eating animal products, like heaps and heaps, So there's a few reasons. So I already understood that, not least by watching Bart K's videos, who is he's a carnivore. He's a promoter of the carnivore type of diet and things like that. And I understanding that when you're consuming a mixture of macronutrients, being, for example, fats and carbohydrates together, um, then that um, tends to cause havoc as far as, maybe you might gain weight, but especially the problem is, um, there's a competition apparently for um, the uptake of carbohydrates into the cells, into your body's cells, like for example muscle cells, and there's competition with the fat. So um, people might talk about that as glucose tolerance. So as you eat more fat, um, your glucose tolerance goes down. But that's not exactly a bad thing, which we can come to in a moment. But in a way, that's that's basically what I'm doing is I'm not wanting to do a mixture of carbohydrates and fats together, or at least if I am having carbohydrates, have only a little bit, so it doesn't trigger that chaos that would otherwise occur if you had an abundance of fat and carbohydrates at the same time. So, for example, if you had a lot of rice and then a lot of meat with it, you would sort of pick one or the other. So you'd go more heavily towards the rice, so the carbohydrates, um, and you would probably have very little to no meat with it or very little fat. That would be the high carb, low fat option, and that tends to allow the body to function quite smoothly in that regard, not causing that chaos that would occur with fat and carbohydrates together, um, not least in the bloodstream. So with of course, uptake of glucose, people would be fairly happy with that as far as glucose tolerance goes, because you haven't got a lot of fat there to compete with sugar. And yeah, like I was saying, as you eat more fat, people find that, maybe in experiments done and things like that, that your your glucose tolerance goes down. So then one might say, oh, that's diabetes. So if you're going to eat a lot of meat and animal products, and then on top of that have heaps and heaps of carbohydrates, you're going to be probably going into elevated blood sugar. You know what I mean? But that's not to say that there's anything wrong with the fat. What's wrong is that there's a mixture at the same time of say a lot of meat, and a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of rice. You see what I mean? Right at the same time. So the problem was I was bulking. I was bulking too much. Like, in a recent video, or it's not that recent now. It's over a month ago. But I was saying how I was gaining a bit of weight. My sort of happy range is around 80 kilos, 82 kilos. Um, and I was around 95 kilos at one point when I was eating a mixture of fat and carbohydrates together, and so plenty of meat, um, plenty of rice and pasta and things like that. And then I realized, I've got experience with doing high carb and low fat before as a vegan, and that going like, losing quite a bit of weight, because yeah, that's not a mixture of too much fat with the carbohydrates, you see. But um, but bear with me. I'll get to why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so what I realized was, yes, of course, I was losing the weight, but in the past, what I experienced was I might have lost a bit too much weight. It's a little bit, for lack of the better word, malnourishing. Let's say, or um, someone might say you could get underweight doing that type of thing. Um, so yes, even Bart Kay says in the short term, yes, it's going to be better than the standard diet of a mixture of fats and carbohydrates together. It's going to be You're going to be doing better in the short term, but in the long term, you're because you've chosen carbohydrates and no animal products pretty much as your main source of nutrition, right? Um, you're not getting a lot of stuff in your diet. A lot of vegans who do it for ethical reasons would appreciate that and be like, yeah, well, um, it's still worth it to take a supplement if I'm missing out on something, um, as opposed to an animal being killed for this meal, an animal being slaughtered for this meal. You know what I mean? Or exploited in any way. So then that could be a trade-off. If you value animal ethics and not exploiting animals very highly, you're probably likely to not be like the people who say, "Oh yeah, plant-based diet is good because it doesn't um, make the body go into mischief when you've got a mixture of fats and carbohydrates." They may not, they may say that to a degree, but they're blaming the fat, not the fact that um, the fat is bad in that context of carbs and fats together, you see? So if you'd gone the other way and gone low carb and very low carbohydrate, high fat, right? Um, it's going to pretty much have the same outcome, probably even better as far as your if say you were a diabetic or something, that's probably the better long-term way to go. I'm not a doctor or anything, or I'm not saying a doctor really knows that necessarily, or they're taught this information, but um, just my own opinion or whatever is uh, you're not consuming carbohydrates. So yeah, I can't remember where I was at, but yeah. um, Yeah, pretty much. I was just saying that before I started talking about doctors not being taught about that stuff. Where was I? Um, it was oh yeah, about how like say a diabetic might do better on low carb because yes, they'll probably be able to get their blood sugar down. The type 2 diabetic, that is, by restricting the fat keeping it very low and having high carb, right? They're probably going to be able to have better glucose tolerance. But then that's not going to be very sustainable long term from the what I was just saying a minute ago, how you're going to be having quite a malnourishing diet. Sorry, vegan people. Yeah, because it still is to the people who don't prioritize ethics as the highest, and they might prioritize their health highest. Um, I know, me. Um, they're they're probably going to like give up, and they're going to say it's not worth it. Like the animal dying for my meal is probably more important than my health failing. Yeah, so that's why I said yes. On a low carb diet and a high carb, low fat diet, a diabetic will probably have similar results short term because they're not spiking their blood glucose. You know what I mean? But in the um, in the long term, which diet is going to be feeding that person adequately the right nourishment? You see what I mean? So even though one would help them in the short term, even though both would help them in the short term, so sorry for shaking my hands like a maniac, but like both will help them in the short term with their glucose, their blood glucose, right? The However, the plant-based one is going to lead to long-term maybe deficiencies, or you're going to be dependent on supplements that how do we know all the stuff that we need, you know what I mean, that we're going to be deficient on? Like we don't know. but but if you're willing to take that gamble, then to gamble with your health, then uh, and because you're a vegan, then go right ahead. I'm not saying go right ahead. Well, that's probably going to be your preference, you see. So someone who prioritizes health more, that the vegans like to call plant-based, you know what I mean? They're probably more likely to see that this isn't sustainable. I've been at this a few years, and or however long I've been at this plant-based diet as a vegan, and I really don't prioritize animal ethics over my health. So let's call it a plant-based diet, and eventually that will inevitably lead you back to animal products, and then you'll realize, okay, a mixture of fat and carbohydrates together is gonna cause chaos in my body, and like poor glucose tolerance. It's probably going poor, yeah, poor in glucose, yeah, but your glucose tolerance is going to be poor, and you're probably going to have elevated blood sugar and things like that, and probably gaining an excess of weight with that mixture of fat and carbohydrates, until you realize, okay, let's go the other way and focus on the meat and animal products and minimize the carbohydrates. You see? So that's where I'm at is, yes, a vegan would say to me, oh, you weren't vegan, you were plant-based. No, I was vegan for animal ethics and for health, um, but it seems that animal ethics was not the highest priority for me. The plant-based diet, for health, was probably, um, my yeah, probably my priority. Yeah. So yeah, that's why it's taken me to a low carb sort of style, and so that's pretty much why I'm doing this, why I'm going low carb, is because I figured, you know, if I have to take supplements, then what's wrong with with my diet, with a plant-based diet? You know what I mean? Is that adequate to nourish me, or am I just in denial and avoiding this obvious idea, uh, um, that meat and animal fats and animal products could well be necessary, you know, to fuel me and nourish me, and not go hell for leather and just like try my best to stick this vegan diet, this plant-based diet out when I know it's not very nourishing, and probably gonna, lead to, short-term health issues as well. Like I was having ulcers in my mouth, your ulcers where it stings in your mouth. You've got sores inside your mouth. So I don't know. I was getting a few of those on high carb, low fat, and yeah. So that's all for now. Maybe I'll talk in other videos more about this stuff. What I've been learning from Bart K on why the uh, carnivore low carb diet um, could have its benefits, um, over a plant based diet, and probably why people who are vegan or into plant based nutrition, the health and stuff like that, um, why they might think their diet is better, and what the drawbacks of carnivore would be. So yeah, here I am, telling you that, that I'm not a vegan. Um, yeah, I'm not evil. It's just, maybe I prioritize my health more than the animal ethics, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll sit with that for a minute. A moment of silence, like, or just to think about that for a second, like, because it was something that was, um that I was grappling for a bit. Like I was thinking to myself, uh, yes, I want to be vegan, and this is the way I want to lose weight, with high carb, low fat, as opposed to low carb, high fat. You see, because I knew both would have the desired outcome. I was gaining excessive weight, on high fat, high carb together, and I had to really choose one or the other. High carb, low fat, which is plant based; low carb, high fat, which is more animal based. And coming to terms with, I'm probably going to need supplements now and all that stuff, and whatever happens, on a plant based diet, I was coming to terms with, you know animals animals are dying for this way of eating animal products. Um, but I'm probably going to get better nourishment, what my body really needs. Um, so is it either I am vegan and support the animal ethics and things like that, but I'm having an issue with you know uh, malnourishment and deficiencies. So am I willing to play around with my health, or am I willing to go, you know what, maybe it is worth it for my health for these animals um, to be slaughtered for my health. You see, um, maybe yeah. So it wasn't really an easy choice. It was weighing on me for a few days. Like yeah, so thinking yes, be vegan for the animals, right? And then you go, yeah, but the supplements and the malnourishment and things like that, maybe being underweight, and then over there you go, okay, well I won't need supplements and won't be gambling with my health, um, eating animal products, uh, but the animals are being killed in slaughterhouses and places like that. So I guess that's the more emotional side to what I'm talking about. All right, but anyway, I had so much to say that it went into a 16-minute video, but the time flies. Yes, and I'll make another video, maybe break it up into little topics, or maybe go long like this again. All right, thank you. See you later. Cheers, vegans. Cheers, carnivores, and yeah, have a have a good day. Bye bye.